to Leading in Luxury, the podcast where we dive deep into the strategies and stories shaping the boutique and luxury hospitality industry. I'm your host, Daniel Renna. For those of you just joining us, we are DMR AI Hospitality Solutions, and we specialize in helping those in the boutique and luxury hospitality industry scale their revenue and profitability by acquiring new clients. Today, we have a very exciting guest, Heath Miller, the visionary behind Reef Bar at Coral View Beach Resort in Utila, Honduras, and a fascinating figure who has navigated the worlds of live music production and luxury hospitality. Now, Heath, let's start at the beginning. You've had quite a career path, from booking major acts in New York to running a boutique hotel.
I wouldn't call Utila a luxury island, or I would call us more of a rustic resort and a developing island than what the traditional sense of luxury is. That being said, we do have intentions of long-term improving our property and getting more luxurious as the years go on, growing with the market and not growing at a too fast a rate. But right now, there's a lot of great potential in the market with the new airport that has opened up in Roatan and other, just increases in tourism for the region.
Great. So can you walk us through how you transitioned from booking major acts in New York to running a boutique hotel?
Sure. So I've been going down to Utila since I was a teenager. My father had purchased land there in the mid-90s and had a former operator that wasn't really operating the hotel all that well. I decided in December 2019 to take over operations at the hotel and invest a bit of my own money in to try to fix up the hotel, and knowing that my dad's intention at that time was to move down there and retire in the coming years, that he unexpectedly passed away. So my initial intention was taking a break from music to get this on track for my father, and knowing that eventually it would, likely land in my hands, but that plan got expedited a bit. Months later, the pandemic hit. So that was a weird thing on just moving from one industry that was completely shuttered, concert industry, to another industry that was pretty much shuttered, even though we needed to close down the hotel for a while to renovate and to really get it to a better place than where it previously was. But what I like to say is that I traded butts and seats for heads and beds and butts on boats. And at the end of the day, hospitality and entertainment and what I call the fun business isn't all that different. That people are taking time out of their day, and even honestly for coming to a vacation destination like Utila, taking time out of their week or their month to come down to spend their hard-earned money on a vacation, that the only thing they really want in return is fun, that no one's forced to go to this like when you're going to a doctor or anything like that. And when my former bosses, Lon Ballinger, Webster Hall, always said it best, that we're in the fun business. We don't sell concert tickets. We don't sell beer. We don't sell whiskey. We sell a fun experience. And for some people, that fun is the concert, or it is that beer, or it's making out with a stranger, or scuba diving when you come to Utila. But people get to choose their own adventure, and our role as the property and the hospitality creators is giving people that canvas to choose their own adventure.
I really like the synthesis that you make between hospitality and entertainment. It's all really the fun business. You're selling an experience, basically.
Right. And look, at the core of both businesses, alcohol sales are critical. Food sales are critical. And the funny thing is, no matter what, every day, someone has to eat a meal. And how luxurious they do or don't go with that meal is up to them and the region, as well as sometimes the cheapest meals I've had in the world have been the most memorable.
So let me ask you about the Coral View Beach Resort, right? It's a 24-room property. When we talked earlier, you said that last year's occupancy rate was around 33%. With all the recent high-profile publicity from the Phoenix Festival documentary and other media projects that are focused on Utila, how are you currently leveraging that exposure to drive direct bookings and significantly increase that occupancy rate? And what are the biggest challenges you're encountering in translating that massive social media traction and media into consistent high-value guest stays?
Well, let's just start with how we're looking for this year. So our January, this year was actually down from last year. And I looked at our year over year, and first of all, last January was way, way better than the January before. But this January, we got hit with a lot of rain, which impacted tourism, particularly our local tourism. So we kind of dropped down to what we were 2 years ago for our January. However, our February and March right now are way better than last year's, to say the least. And it's an interesting thing to sometimes really peg exactly how a social media campaign like this impacts the individual person and where. Because one of the key things this does is increases the familiarity factor. That people are hit with so many advertising messages and so many social media messages every day. But once you're hit with it a few times, it starts becoming familiar and comfortable. Now, Roatan is the much bigger name in our market. for tourism. And with now Utila being so much more in the media in the last 3 months, people that hadn't heard of it ever before are hearing about it, and they're never exactly sure where they heard about it.
Right.
Typically, they're like, oh, I saw something on social media. And like, I know what they mean when they say that, because it's one of two things, either this or they saw something from one of the people that works with us on our nonprofit called Support Utila, who has become quite the social media influencer in Honduras, Kirk Hayes, who's probably, I guess, as I like to say, the number one gringo influencer in Honduras at this point. Like to the level that like random people that I know that don't really know anything about Honduras, like he's jumped up on their TikTok feeds because he's now, at millions of followers. So if it's not him, it's been the project with Billy McFarland right now. That's really been our driver as of recent. Because when we're marketing something like this, also concerts, I was marketing to a region. When I was booking a show in New York, I was marketing to the tri-state area primarily. When I'm marketing a hotel property, I'm marketing to the entire world. And I'm obviously focusing on the regions that we get our most existing traffic from, because I come from the school of thought of accentuating the positive and ignoring the negative when it comes to marketing. And, not throwing good money after bad. Like, for example, we get a very small amount of tourism out of Asia and India coming to Utila, Honduras. Therefore, I shouldn't be spending money in that region because I think there's reasons why that region doesn't come to us. I think the flights are inconvenient. They're long. Many other good regions that are much more close to them, that unless they're coming on like a whole journey and like coming for more than a week or week and a half, it's a heavy lift, I think, for someone to come from Japan or India, but they're usually coming for like a month. And even I, like when I travel, I know I'm going somewhere that's kind of a headache to get to. I don't really only want to go for a weekend or for 5 or 7 days. Like I really want to try to get at least 10 days in, knowing that the first day is going to be gone. And not everyone has that luxury. And it's interesting that in the dive community, a lot of people are on that path where they're doing those extended trips when they can. That we'll get a lot of people that are coming down and they're like, cool, I'm only an open water diver and I want to leave here a rescue diver or a dive master. And we don't focus really on anything above dive master. We really mostly focus on the recreational diver. There's other scuba hotels on the island that are more hostels that are focused on someone coming for a month to 3 months where they're doing what they call zero to hero. I barely have scuba dove before, and I'm going to leave here as a dive master or even as an instructor. So, I mean, at our hotel, because also we're not going after the instructor market, we host the PADI IDC monthly testing, the instructor dive courses for when you're becoming a dive instructor. And because we're a neutral property on the island, that we're not really fighting with everyone else over the same clientele, that we're really trying to go after our own audience of more the recreational travel. And me personally, coming out of New York and New Jersey and the entertainment business, I do really tend to go after the regions that I know the best and the audiences I know the best. And scuba diving is an interesting thing because there's a lot of people that do it, but it's not like you meet someone that scuba dives every day. But the barrier of entry to scuba diving is really, honestly, easy and very inexpensive in Honduras. Utila is specifically known as one of the less costly regions to learn how to dive, and like what we call a discovery scuba dive, which is like I think it works out to being about 3 hours total, maybe 4 hours, if you're going slowly, of basically like a trial before you make the bigger commitment into a $400 3-day, I have to read a bunch of stuff and I'm going to leave here a certified diver. It's getting to put your literal toe in the water. And like one of the cool things we did during Phoenix was we had a lot of the Phoenix was the rebranded Fire Festival event we just did with Billy McFarland in December, that we had for the first time famous rappers scuba diving on Utila. And like one of the exciting things I saw about having the famous rapper Bobby Shmurda with 5 million Instagram followers voluntarily being like, man, I want to learn how to dive. And him putting up a reel that now has, 800,000 views. It's like, cool, this is something now that actually now this community that hasn't really dove is getting attention and Bobby's pushing them our way. I'm trying to create my own audience. It's been like a cool thing. Now we're getting people that are more hip hop fans that aren't really the traditional, I would say, more backpacker, hippie or older, like, traditional scuba diving audiences, particularly for our market.
That's fascinating. It sounds like you're not just running a hotel, but you're like actively shaping the destination itself with bringing people to experiences that they would not have had otherwise. I think that's really cool.
If you're on Roatan, I like to say it's the poor man's Hawaii now, even though it's not like obviously people are necessarily all poor there. Honduras is a third world country. The average wage in the country is $3 to $4. And, I try to be mindful of that also when dealing and working with people and like the way you would do things in America versus there, knowing, the difference in finances. What would cost for a day of living in most American cities versus Utila, Honduras is significantly less. Most of my friends that have come down from New York and LA and other high cost of living markets have said, saved money on my trip somehow. Like I spent less here than I did in a normal week in New York, even with my hotel room and my flight. Like it's that much. Look, when I visit in New York, I look and say, wow, what I spend in about a month in New York, I think is about 6 months of normal expenses in Honduras on just the massive cost differences. But I don't want people coming just because it's a region that's less costly. I want people coming because it's a beautiful island in a beautiful area with a great community that is safe and some of the best diving in the world. And even the people that came for the Phoenix event were primarily people that had never heard of Utila before. Some of them had never even paid attention to Honduras before. And everyone left with not the opinion they were expecting when they came in. And everyone's like, the food here is great. I'm like, yeah, the fish came from right there. Like, guy named Zorro, who's, a fifth or sixth generation, if not longer, on the island, is like one of the fishermen we buy from. And like, we try to buy hyper local as much as we can for the products.
And actually, that leads me to my next question. I was going to ask you, what specific operational or guest experience improvements are you prioritizing to upgrade the hotel, the resort, the island itself? How do you plan to maintain a unique, authentic charm of Utila while elevating the luxury aspect for a more discerning international clientele? And are there any particular technology, service enhancements, or unique offerings that you're exploring to achieve that balance?
Weirdly enough, the biggest problem I had was adapting to the market for employment, that we are on a small island with a limited labor pool. And I try not to put the cart before the horse. And like one of the real things is I say, not one of the real things, one of the things I often say, we are not a five-star resort, but that doesn't mean that we cannot give five-star service. And once I get people and my employees being the ones that I'm looking for, which I think right now we're the best we've been, that we have a great staff now, and it's taken a long time. It's taken 5 years, to get to almost 4 years in December, going into year 5 now, I think, of getting my staffing and the hotel to a place where I felt comfortable hosting an event like Phoenix. And on an island with 7,000 people or so, it's a small labor pool. 7,000 people probably lived on my block in New York City, and I'm probably not exaggerating. So after we got past that, now, we're able to do a lot of the expansion opportunities we're looking for. But from a technology basis, I think we're a little more buttoned up on our technology stack. We use Cloudbeds as our PMS. I use Lightspeed for our restaurant, for our POS system there. And those are integrated, that we're one of the few hotels, at least on Utila. And even besides, I think the major chains on Roatan or the major like resorts, I think we're one of the few that you could charge to your room.
Really?
And I look at that as a really important thing, because when I'm going to go scuba, and like nowadays it's easier with your cell phone, but also like not everyone wants to leave their cell phone sitting at the bar when you're going snorkeling or diving. And I love like when someone can come out from snorkeling or diving and like with their gear still on, they can order food and drinks and then just de-gear, take a quick freshwater rinse outside, and not have to go back to their room. And from a financial perspective, I know every minute they're spending in their room, they're not spending somewhere else in the hotel. And like our rooms are relatively basic. Like they're fine. The beds are comfortable. They have good hot water. They have good pressure. But we don't have TVs in most of the rooms, because who is coming here to sit in your room watching TV? But like, I don't want people in their rooms. I want people out on the beach, people on the dock. I want people playing volleyball. I want people scuba diving. I want people having shrimp that was caught, in our waters. I want people having that experience that they're not getting at home.
I love the way that you phrased it. You said it's not a 5-star resort, but that doesn't mean you can't give 5-star service. So my question then is, how are you planning to adapt your, let's say, marketing strategies to attract the higher tier international traveler who's looking for that 4 or 5-star experience, especially considering the unique market of Utila?
Me coming out from the entertainment world, one of the things I always hated doing was paying for advertising. And not that it wouldn't cost money to execute the advertising, but paid media, particularly in New York, was extremely expensive, and it was difficult to stand out through the noise. So I was always a big fan of doing, I guess what you could say is publicity stunts, or things that just really grab eyeballs, or just sometimes doing deals that don't make sense, like booking an artist where it's like, we're going to lose money on this, but everyone is going to be like, oh my God, wow, Metallica just played Webster Hall. I mean, we made money at the bar. It was fine. We didn't lose money on a Metallica show. we really gave Metallica all the money for that show and like bumped doing a show that would have technically actually made more money. You don't pass on Metallica. But what we are doing right now is we just wrapped the documentary that we shot with Billy McFarland, charting his experience from, his exit from prison, from his mistakes at Fire 1 and his journey from being Fire 2, which he ended up selling the name rights and we changed it to Phoenix. That was supposed to originally happen in Mexico and had problems with the Mexican government and various stories on that. And I believe he didn't really have the right people that were really plugged in well enough. And I just don't think the explanation to the Mexican government maybe was smooth enough in the first place. Like my first conversation in Utila about this was with the mayor, and I said, this is going to be controversial. You're going to get calls from the Wall Street Journal. You're going to get calls from like the news. Like you're probably going to end up on the American news. And like the first thing he said to me was, Heath, you're nuts. And I said, I know, but this guy doesn't want to go back to jail. This guy is not looking to screw up. This guy is looking for a chance. And like Alex, he's the mayor of Utila. I'm like, as well as I do, like we need to get some more eyeballs on this island. Like we need to kick up tourism. And I'll make sure, whatever we do with him, that I know falls on me at the end of the day as the person that lives here, is a legal resident here, whose wife is a citizen here. So we did that event. We got a ton of exposure on social media, approximately 120 million views from content that was clipped and reshared. And we shot a documentary from that. The last about 45 minutes of the hour and a half is all Utila. It's all Honduras. It's all me. It's all my wife. It's all my staff. Pecos is great, but Utila is special. And now that's being shopped to the major streamers, which we hope ends up on Netflix. But parallel and concurrent with that, we're starting to work on a concept and shopping and doing some initial shooting, probably starting in May or June. Billy has some other filming commitments that are messing with our schedule on that to produce an unscripted series, which would be not only then following Billy and his journey of rebuilding his brand and trying to eventually relaunch a festival as big as the initial Fire Festival, but also kind of like showing us improving the hotel and fixing the hotel and adding new things to it. So one of the core projects that we want to embed into that is building out a sponsored recording studio at the hotel, where then both I and Billy can leverage our relationships in the music industry. Billy has lots of famous rappers and famous DJs and famous musicians that are happy to work with him, happy to text back with him, sometimes shockingly, where I'm just like, oh, wow, okay. And, I have a lot of personal relationships with musicians, a lot in the hip hop world, a lot in the rock world, and some in the EDM and pop world. I've run this idea by them to make sure I'm not crazy. And everyone's just like, all right, so free recording studio, we have to pay for rooms and food. Okay, we're in as long as it's real. I've talked to the labels. I've talked to some managers. And I see that as really our content machine to feed us year round. That if I have artists coming here constantly in Utila and them coming to record even in our off season, because they're not going to care if it's raining outside as long as I don't do a tin roof, that, they're not hearing raindrops while they're recording, they'll be driving more traffic. Because even if I didn't really want to go to Utila in November when it's raining, if my favorite band was recording there and I know they're going to do like a pop-up DJ set or an acoustic set once in a while when they're hanging out there, because that's essentially the payment I'm looking for using the free studio, I would probably do that. So if One Republic was recording in Utila, Honduras at Coral View, and you'd seen that every time a band records there, they're doing something, even if it's November, would you consider going down?
Why not?
And like, even though it's like, okay, it's going to be rainy some days. First of all, you could still go scuba diving in the rain as long as it's not too wavy and too windy, which November I use as the example because that's like peak rain season for us. Even though this November we got and our rain came in January this year instead. But we had the whole film crew down there for November this past year. So that like improved our occupancy just from having, 8 to 10 rooms a day booked from film and crew, from film staff and other crew that was there, definitely helped our November. That's not going to necessarily happen next November, but hopefully next November I'll have an artist and a bunch of their fans coming down every week or every weekend to like see what's going on. And not only that, just have a regular vacation and the band ends up being the bonus. Because sometimes I'll plan our travel around like certain anchor events on places that we want to go to anyway, whether it's a food event in Chicago or a concert in Italy or Coachella in California. Something that's just like, okay, that's the reason to go then. And it might be that something that pushes someone that's on the edge that's like, you know what, screw it. Like, let's go down. I've been looking for a reason to go down there. This is the icing I've been looking for. And that's really what it is. I
That's
think I'm
awesome.
looking for the icing. And plus, this would feed content for the reality series. And even if we don't end up doing the reality series long term, or it ends up just being 4 episodes, the artist coming down and putting it on their social media that they're there and they're recording would be, I think, the driver I need to not have to spend money after the investment of building out the recording studio.
Indeed. Just the thought of this, and just it's such a unique way, coming from specifically from your background, to use what you know, to leverage it to upgrade your own facilities, to upgrade the Utila as not just a destination, but as a brand, as it were. I just think it's really, really fascinating. If you had a magic wand and can fix just one thing that's an obstacle in all of this, what would that one thing be?
A nice big solar system for the hotel that would be on 24/7 with battery, that I wouldn't be concerned about the proximity to the salt water ruining a very expensive investment. Because right now my electricity cost is one of my highest costs. I don't make any money from, the investment in paying my electric bill every month, but it's a necessity. And that would save me a lot of money. I would also prefer to be a little more environmentally conscious and not have to be on a traditional power plant that runs the island.
And especially, when you put the recording studio in there.
The recording studio would be a much easier lift just to do solar for that. A plan, Anchor has a new product that looks like it would be sufficient and proper for the solar system. And they've been a pretty reliable company with other products I've used from them. And I'm like, all right, let's bring some heavier duty stuff with us. That's been a really good, reliable product that's now held up in the saltwater environment, as opposed to some of the other products that are more smaller brands that I think I also would have a more difficult time enacting the warranty if there was an issue. I think also for the whole hotel, I'm looking at $100,000 to $200,000 for a solar build out for what we need to do, as opposed to the recording studio, I think would be a much less costly investment for solar.
Interesting. So Heath, also you've been working on a nonprofit. So why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I got stuck in America on my way back down to Honduras in April, well, it was March and then April, and then for a few months until August, the border to Honduras closed for non-citizens because of the pandemic. And I have a lot of nonprofit experience from New York of working with both Safe Horizon, which is a domestic abuse nonprofit. They provide services for victims, as well as James Beard Foundation, which the James Beard Foundation is a culinary nonprofit. Good food for good is kind of the moral of James Beard. So I got stuck in America. And I'm sitting there watching, things get weird in Honduras. And I realized that people are going to run out of money for food really quick. And I started using my nonprofit experience to fundraise from friends and family in the States to, bring in revenue to contribute food to the community and medical resources and, other things to help through the pandemic. So the year of the pandemic, we did about 55,000 pounds of food, which was pretty cool. Nowadays, we have shifted our focus primarily to the environment and to education, as well as animal welfare, which we were working with the shelter Jaspers on Utila, which is the animal shelter there, which I believe would have closed throughout the pandemic completely and probably wouldn't have reopened if it wasn't for the contributions that Support Utila was able to pull in for them. I would say 75% of the computers that are in the public schools on Utila were contributed by us and, people that have donated. Even when we started the project of the Fire Festival and now Phoenix Festival with Billy McFarland, I said, hey, dude, if this goes badly, I need to at least get something good out of it. So donate at least a dozen computers to the public school. He ended up donating 18 computers to the public school, which are going to the public school's computer room on Pigeon Key, which weirdly enough ended up being where we ended up doing the Phoenix Festival event was on Diamond Key. So it was pretty cool that he gave that contribution, because otherwise they would have had a computer room with 4 computers there, which it's really hard for computers to teach kids how to use them when they don't actually get to touch them that much.
Exactly.
So it's also, I like to go into something and say, if you're in the position to do good, you should. And even though I'm not as an outsider in Utila, as I've been coming there from a teenager and I have family connections down there and relations, and my wife, and her family are Honduran and from the Bay Islands, I think it's something I should do. And I think everyone that moves to a third world country that has a couple extra bucks in their pocket or the ability to do something good for their community should.
So, Heath, what other opportunities do you have that are coming out of the whole thing that you're working on Utila?
So one of the cool things that has happened is we're starting, not we, I guess me really and Billy, we're starting to get hit up by other hotel owners globally. They're in other similar markets to Utila saying they want us to do what we just did on Utila for them. And when we explained the whole plan of now recording studio and this and that, we're starting to get a lot of interest, some from investors and, other companies. And we've kind of grown the idea from what we started at to perhaps in the next 5 or so years, trying to expand it out past and rolling out this concept to 3 or 4 other properties globally that we wouldn't necessarily own, that we would partner with and be either a consultant or an equity partner in, as well as, then trying to tie these properties in together where we can say, okay, so this one's scuba diving. Let's do surfing at this one. Let's do some other extreme water sport activity at this one, and whatever makes the most sense in that market. Because, you don't always go on a vacation for one reason. A lot of hotels are struggling to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. Having a pipeline to talent and a recording studio on site is definitely something that not many places are doing.
No, I've never heard of it before. Maybe Las Vegas, where the shows and stuff, but I mean, this is really amazing that you could do it.
Yeah, but that was definitely, I went there once just out of curiosity years ago, and it planted that seed in my mind of like, maybe one day I'll put a studio at the hotel, let's see where it goes.
That's interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out how this all works, and one day I hope to come visit you. That would be really, really neat.
Hey, it's an easy flight from most places.
All right. All right, I got to tell you, Heath, the whole idea is just fascinating, and the whole conversation, I think, has been really fantastic. I want to thank you so much for sharing such a compelling story and so many valuable insights into your unique view of the hospitality world, especially with the whole perspective from Utila and the music industry as well. I know our audience is going to get a lot out of this. To our listeners, I want to thank you for tuning into Leading in Luxury. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more from leaders in the industry, be sure to subscribe to our channel and drop us a like. We'll leave a link to Heath's amazing hotel, the Coral View Beach Resort, in the description below. For Leading in Luxury, I'm Daniel Renna, and I'll see you next time.